This episode is brought to you by the Cornell Executive MBA MS in Healthcare Leadership, in partnership with the Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences. The future of healthcare needs motivated and business-minded leaders who are equipped to facilitate change from within their organization and throughout the industry at large. Offered on the weekend in New York City, the Cornell Executive MBA MS in Healthcare Leadership is the only dual degree of its kind, combining business breadth and healthcare depth with world-class faculty instruction and an unmatched alumni network. Take the next step towards driving innovation in the healthcare industry by connecting with their admissions team. Search Cornell EMBA-MS to start your journey. Thank you so much for being such a big supporter of the Ellevate podcast. We want to learn more about you and what keeps you up at night. What are the topics and speakers most relevant to you in your career? Please go to ellevatepod.com to fill out our survey, and we'll make sure to incorporate your suggestions as we're planning for 2022.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella. How's it going?
Hi, Kristy. It's going well. I'm really busy today, trying to catch up and do like 10 things at a time. And I haven't drank enough coffee. And that's about it.
I know. I hear you. And actually, our guest today, Emery, is probably feeling the same way. She is just a woman on a mission to change media, to change conversation, and to change lives. She's the founder and CEO of You Are You, The Right to Be, Inc., and she is also a producer, author, and filmmaker known for producing socially conscious storytelling on a variety of platforms. She's just a true inspiration from, where she gets her passion and her drive to why she cares so much about changing the conversation, the ways that we tackle social issues in media. And so she is someone that's just inspiring and definitely, I think, is as busy as you are, Maricella.
I can't wait to hear the interview. It's going to be interesting to hear what Crystal has to say. It's a great mission.
Yes, we need more crystals. Well, let's get to my interview with Emery. Hello, Crystal. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast. It's great to have you here.
And it is great to be here.
I'd love to get us started on this conversation by learning a little bit more about you. Could you share a bit about your story and how you got to where you are today?
Kristy, you could write like 5 screenplays about my story and how I got here today. So which aspect of my multidimensional life would you like to talk about?
This sounds like we've got a lot of fun things to talk about. I would love, just your work and your passion. You're doing so much right now. The CEO of, is it the You Are You?
It's You Are You, The Right to Be.
So CEO of You Are You, The Right to Be. I know that you are very passionate about media and representation. How did this journey get you to this place? And what is the work that you're doing?
Okay, so the simple version is I was born to do the work that I do. Like in 5th grade, I wrote and directed my first play, right? So it's not like I consciously chose this as I came into this lifetime to do this. For me, it is about the narrative. It is about how we use multimedia to change the narrative. I used to go to the movies in New York with my family, and you paid $1 and see 3 movies. And one of those movies was The Love of Ivy with Abby Lincoln and Sidney Poitier. It was the first time as a kid that I saw Black people that looked like my parents, the same issues. And I was like, wow, I want to be an actress. I want to tell our story. And from there, it was a series of life journeys. I was an actress by the time I was in seventh grade. When I was 16, I met I call her my beloved, at Tazaki Shande. And then Tazaki took me into a whole world of theater and film that I had not been exposed to. And she took me some places that I wouldn't recommend most 16-year-olds go. But for this 16-year-old, it was what I needed. And then from there, I went to college and just started creating work that I wanted to see. For a while, I worked in LA. I was under option with the great Suzanne DePass, but I found that LA just didn't work for me. So I came back east and I just started doing my own thing. And that is how we ended up where I am. Right now, I am a virtual reality producer. CBS Network has a show called Mission Unstoppable, where they featured my virtual reality game. It's called You Can't Be What You Can't See. My film, Deadliest Disease in America, opened earlier this month in New York as we were fulfilling the specifications to be Academy qualified. So, how did I get here? I was born to be here.
Thank you for sharing your story, Crystal. And I love just the twists and turns, the influences of our families and our, societies, the influences of people we meet and how that, directs us and supports us on that journey. Let's talk more about the deadliest disease in America. As you mentioned, it premiered recently in New York City. And tell me more about this documentary and what it covers.
Well, the deadliest disease in America is not COVID-19. It's really racism. And so the film looks at racism through the lens in the health profession. And, every stereotype being denied, appropriate medications or tests. But I had the great fortune to have both Dr. Maricella Smith and Dr. Kamara Jones to be part of the film. And Dr. Jones does a wonderful explanation about the three levels of racism, right? And to think about her explanation is it's for everybody, right? Because people of color, they have experienced racism, but they don't really know that there's institutionalized racism. Okay, what does that really look like? There's mediated racism, which is the thing, that is the most common, I don't like you because you're Black. But then there's internalized racism about how our behaviors are really cultivated in response to outside racist behaviors. So I tried to simplify, although you can't simplify racism, right? Because it has no logic or reason, but make it in a way that the audience could lower their defense mechanism and then absorb and walk away with some tools for change.
Thank you for this important work, and it is important work. And I think I know it's an ongoing journey of understanding how we got to this place and what this means and how we continue to put in the work to create change, and particularly around healthcare and racism and that intersection, particularly within the Ellevate community. We talk so much about poor access to maternal care for Black women and mortality rates. There's definitely during COVID-19 been a lot of discussions around the inequities within access to healthcare. And what are some of the main themes? You just covered a few, but that our listeners should really become more aware of and explore deeper.
You know what? I think as a Black woman, and then as any woman of color, because I also think about my Latin sisters and my Native American sisters, that we are always dismissed, right? And we have to become stronger advocates for ourselves. We are already advocate on behalf of our family, but do we really advocate on behalf of ourselves? And I think that is really, really important. Everybody is tired, right? Translation fatigue, right? Got particularly women. I make this joke that I gotta explain to my husband why. I gotta explain to my parents why. I gotta explain to my kids why. I gotta explain to white people why, right? Got to explain to my staff why. What my hope is that as we look at how racism plays out in our everyday world, that we also look at the history of Black women, because we are the backbone of this country, but that we just don't take care of ourselves. And sometimes we don't know whether it's racism or sexism that is attacking us. And so we need to be clear, but we really need to advocate stronger on our behalf. Sometimes people think advocating means that you have to be big, loud, and noisy. I always call my grandmother a revolutionary patriota. That's a term from Alice Walker, I think. And my grandmother was one of the first 5 women to be ordained in the Church of God. First 5 Black women, by the way. And I have found, religion to be, so oppressive and racist in the name of God. But one of the things, I watched her move mountains, right? In her very quiet, persistent, gentle way. And I think that, as we are advocating for ourselves, you don't have to scream loud, but you have to be really persistent and consistent. And sometimes, if somebody is wronged you, particularly within a health profession, they don't get it. They don't see it. So you screaming at them only plays into, the angry Black woman thing.
What are some ways that you've advocated for yourself? And I ask this question because I hear this a lot, in advocating for yourself in life, in the doctor's office and the workplace doesn't always come naturally, but it is important. And I think especially as we talk about healthcare and access to health coverage, and we've seen so many stories of women who have been misdiagnosed or too long to diagnose because others weren't listening to them, and we part of this I think too is, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, maybe I don't know, but we know our bodies and we know our situations. Do you have specific advice that you've leaned on to advocate for yourself and have your voice heard?
Well, the biggest advice that I lean on to is my faith, right? That I believe there's a power greater than I am. And if I'm quiet enough, I can hear what to do. But I'm going to share a story. It took me 10 years to complete Deadliest Disease in America. And right before we started principal photography, and again, I had never experienced what I'm about to say, but right before that, I got really, really sick, right? And I ended up in the hospital. And so the first time that I was admitted. They thought I had a heart attack. And they did an echogram and they did some other tests. And all the tests came back, even the blood work, that there was some activity going on in my heart because I probably had a heart attack. And so at that time, the hospital had changed its policy. And my normal doctor, I would not see him in the hospital. You had to see whoever they assigned you to within the hospital staff. And so this joker is assigned to me, and I am sick. The other thing, at the same time, I had an egg burst in my uterus. That is one of the most painful things to ever happen. But they didn't know what it was, so I can't breathe. I feel like I had a heart attack. And, my uterus is screaming dear life. So this doctor comes in, and I say, I think I need a heart catheterization. Now, that is the definitive measure to know if you had a heart attack, right? Now, I had read all the statistics that Black and Black women and Latin women were the least likely to be recommended for this procedure. And I say to the guy, because the guy is like so ignorant that he is, I am Dr. So-and-so. And I looked at your test and I don't believe you need this. Now I am sick and I am like in pain. I've been in the hospital for 2 days. And I just had to take a deep breath, close my eyes, and go to that place that our ancestors survived. Like I always think about Harriet Jacobs, that she lived in that crawl space for 7 years. Or so I pull on what I call ancestral strength. I closed my eyes and I said to the guy, look, I am overweight. I'm a diabetic. I have a neuromuscular disease. Every test came back that I had a heart attack. So why would you deny me this treatment? The guy said to me, well, my schedule is too full. I said, would your schedule be as full? Because if there was a lawsuit against you. So he got really pissed. He left the room. I called up one of my other doctors and said, I'm in the hospital. They said, you know what? When I do rounds, I'll be right over. They said, and they knew when they looked at my chart who the guy was. They said, Crystal, I'm going to get you a different cardiologist. But in the meantime, the guy came back and he said, I decided that I can squeeze you in my schedule tomorrow. And I said, what would make you think that I would let you operate or do any procedure on me at this point? You were rude. You did not want to recommend a procedure that I really need. I said, and your attitude is an attitude of contempt. So why would I allow you to touch me? I said, what I would like is for you to remove yourself from my room and don't come back. Because the guy was totally pissed. But you have to, if you don't feel comfortable with the doctor, if you don't feel comfortable with what advice you're getting, it is your right, it is your legal right to get a second opinion. Everyone is entitled to a second opinion. If you ever feel threatened or not sure of what somebody's explaining to you, you can ask for another opinion. If you feel that someone is being oppressive or demeaning you, you can say that. And now, because hospitals have gotten so many lawsuits, they listen. They listen. They will have somebody there to be there advocating with you, particularly during the time that we're in right now, COVID-19, when you cannot have your family members there with you. You say, I feel threatened. And as soon as you say those words, that hospital staff is going to behave very differently.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but that's, just the ways, and I appreciate, that example, and that example covered, many touch points of how you know yourself, your history in your body, you know what needs to be done, and, how you can lean on people you trust, your network, your doctor, how you can advocate for yourself and stand your ground. And I think that lesson is, incredibly relevant in this situation, but across the spectrum of our lives, and trusting in yourself, leaning on those that are there to support you, and being able to say no. This isn't okay. When I am feeling that I don't have that voice, leaning on others has always helped me to move forward.
You know what? But right now, the place that we're in, sometimes we don't have a other with us, right? And I really believe in the ancestral power. I really believe that if you close your eyes and you take a deep breath, that within each of us is a wealth of strength, because we wouldn't have gotten here without it. And a lot of times I just have to close my eyes, can take a deep breath, and let spirit lead me, and know that spirit is going to protect me. And when you are sick, you do not want to have to fight with anyone, you know, but you do have the right to say, I am unsure of what you just said. I need a second opinion. I need somebody to help me translate what you just said. And you can say it very gently, but as soon as you say the words, I feel threatened, that hospital will respond in a very different way.
Yeah, so true. Crystal, I appreciate you telling me about You Are You, The Right to Be. I know it's a nonprofit based in Connecticut, but it's really about your dedication to creating a more equitable world through media, technology, science, and the arts. And there's a lot of important work to be done there. I thank you for doing that work, and I'd appreciate it if you could tell us a bit more about the organization.
Well, we are in our 26th year. You Are You, The Right to Be. And originally our company was called Upper Room Unlimited. And I kept getting all of these weird responses and religious things. And I found out that there's an international organization called Upper Room Unlimited. So I took the letters You Are You. And I was like, wow, okay, you are you. You have the right to be. And I think everybody has the right to be. I am not in judgment of anybody else. I don't know what their steps look like to put them in a place that they are. As I said, I believe in a power greater than myself. So you are you, and you have the right to be, even if you're Trump. I mean, I don't know why he's here, but he has a purpose. And since I didn't get the memo on what his purpose was, it is what it is. I believe that in order to solve a problem, you have to bring all the stakeholders to the table. So the work that we do, whether it's with policymakers or building robots with high school students, right? We make sure that those policymakers that are making the policies that affect that high school student meet each other, right? Because you have lots of people making policy that have never experienced the community that they're creating policy for. Then we flip the script and help our communities understand how to advocate on behalf of themselves. And environmental justice is a good example. I grew up in a housing project called Brookside. It was one of the most beautifulest places that you could ever live. It was next to a nature preserve. About 5 years into living there, and again, at that time, it was 60% white. Um, as it became more people of color, a dumping area was created right outside of it, right? And did we know that that dump would grow, could leak toxins, that our kids would get sick? No, we did not, right? And so what I do is I take the arts, multimedia, and create it in a way that lowers people's defense mechanism so that you can educate and inform them and then allow them to make decisions. But you cannot make informed decisions if you don't have the information. And most transfer stations or dumps are directly outside of Black and brown neighborhoods. You will not go into a suburban, wealthy area and find that they dump their garbage where they live. And so we want to bring all people to the table, not just for the conversation, but then to turn that conversation into action. So that is what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, the conversation into action is so central to what we believe here at Ellevate Network. Really manifests this a lot through our Mobilize Women series, where we're talking about the issues that impact us in the world and how we take action towards creating change. And each of us has work to do on that. As we go through life and we're exposed to new injustices or new scenarios. We see people in our communities that are disproportionately impacted. I know we've talked about, COVID-19 and so many of the disparities that, had a spotlight shown on them during this time. But I couldn't agree more with just, that taking action for change. And it's not always clear, but it's through people like you, Crystal, who are such advocates who are putting in the work around media and representation, storytelling, who are really champions for change. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that you do.
Well, the other thing is I have designed a program called Building Bridges, the Power of the Sisterhood, right? And I've been working on this for about 8 years. And we've done it around the country, in Texas, and Wellesley, and Yale, and Washington, D.C., North Carolina. And what I found, Kristy, is that we as women, we got to do some work with just each other, right? You know, building bridges, the power of the sisterhood. So I break it up into 2 days. One day, all women of color meet, and all white women meet separately. And then they come together on the second day. But when I work with the women of color, that's black and brown and indigenous, we have some housekeeping that we need to do in order to become better allies, right? Because the way real change happens is that you have to have a strong ally base. And then we meet with white women. And the whole goal is, how do we break up the barriers that we have created? Because some of those barriers we have created to protect ourselves, right? But we have got to create a new paradigm. And as a woman, as a black woman, as a black woman who's a quadriplegic, because I cannot tell you how much shade I get from black women because I'm a quadriplegic. When I come in the room, they're like, "Oh, who are you here with?" I mean, it gets to be a little crazy. But as we are doing the real work, we have to start with ourselves, and how do we become a better sister, right? Well, first we got to become a better woman, and then we build allies, and that is what makes our global women's network even stronger.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So, Chris, I'd love to end this conversation with a few quick questions to get to know you better. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Totally extrovert.
I love it. What's your favorite day of the week?
Mondays. I love Mondays. You get to start the week all over.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm an everything girl. I wake up at 6 in the morning. I go to bed at 1 o'clock.
Oh my gosh. Who would be your dream dinner guest?
Trevor Noah. I
Oh.
think he's really brilliant. He has a lot to say. And I could look at him all evening.
Yes. What do you have any pet peeves?
Repetition and mediocrity. I hate to repeat anything that I just did. Can have to go back. Got mediocrity. I just think every day, every moment that you should try to be the very best you could be at that moment.
Do you have a morning must-have or staple to get your day started off on the right foot?
Opening my eyes. That's the morning staple.
What is your favorite recent read?
The Greatest Love by Guru Vanillane.
Do you have a top self-care practice?
Meditation. I believe that meditation calms the spirit and all the noisiness of our day. And if you just take a moment to meditate, it just helps you stay focused.
Yeah. And do you have a final thought you want to leave with our listeners here today?
I do. I want to ask your listeners is, what are you doing as an individual looking at the woman in the mirror to change yourself in order to change the people around you? Because that change in you is a ripple effect around all those that you interact with. So what are you doing for yourself to make the change that you want to see happen?
Yes, that is a perfect thought and a call to action. And I hope our listeners really internalize that and take some time to think about that. And thank you so much for joining us today, Crystal. It was great to have you on the podcast.
Kristy, thank you. And, I'm going to become a member. I want to join the Strong Global Women's Network. Leadership is very lonesome. Leadership as a woman. So I want to be with like-minded women. Thank you for having me. And I always end with the word namaskar. And namaskar is a Sanskrit word. And it means the good or God, whichever one works for you. In me honors the good in you. So Kristy and her audience, namaskar.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ElevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network. And become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
When you hire your local CertaPro painters, you get
the power of a cut above.
Decades of expertise to transform your home. From so-so to virtuoso.
The power of neighborhood painters.
We live where you live and probably like the same pizza place you do. Put
the power of pro
to work for you today. Get your project started at CertaPro.com.
Each CertaPro painter's business is independently owned and operated.